Hi, this is Cedar from Cedar Sacred Well. I'm here with my friend Éliane St Marie from Parenting for Wholeness, and we're going to be talking about common nervous system misconceptions and misunderstandings.
Well, I am so excited to be doing this, but basically just to hear what you have to say, because I think it was a couple weeks ago where we were talking about, I don't know, something that I was dealing with, and you said, the fact that your nervous system is activated doesn't mean you're dysregulated. And you said something about wanting to record a video on this. And I said, can you please do it today? Because I want to know the answer. So I am here to learn. So I can't wait to hear your, debunking those misconceptions.
That's a great place to start with this idea of dysregulation because people often say, oh, I'm dysregulated, when what they mean is I'm activated. So when you're activated, it means that you're in some kind of survival state, whether that's a hyperarousal or hypoarousal. And people use um, dysregulated as a shorthand for being in a survival state, and regulated kind of as a shorthand for being in a rest state. And I've done this myself, so I'm just as guilty. But neither of those things actually mean that. What dysregulation actually means is when you're stuck in one of those states and your nervous system isn't able to shift back. So it's like when the gear shift of a car gets stuck in one particular gear and you don't have the ability to use all the different functions that are available, because we want to be able to use all of our different survival states.
So saying I'm dysregulated just because I'm feeling activated, it's like saying, I don't know, my gears aren't working because I'm in first gear, but I think I should be in third gear.
Right.
And yet I need all five gears or whatever, four gears, depending on the car to function proper. Like you do need all the gears because different ones serve a purpose.
Exactly.
Like you use a different gear based on if you're going slow or faster.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Or, there may be times where you need to go in reverse or you need to stop and park completely. And you have to be able to do all those things to get where you want to go and to drive safely. But if your gear shift was to get stuck in one of them, then that would become unsafe, right? So it's a similar thing with the nervous system where we want to be able to have access to all of the different survival states. And there's more than three, so maybe we'll touch on that next. Um, but when we get stuck in one of them, that's what we call dysregulation or chronic. Some people will say chronic dysregulation, which is what can have negative impacts on your health.
If I'm activated, it's an appropriate reaction to whatever is happening or whatever I'm needing to do.
It may be. That's the other piece of my definition of regulation is I say it's agility and appropriateness. So I'm going to go into that a bit more deeply in my training that's coming up, which I'll link below. But it's essentially the idea that you have the agility to move into the different states with, the gear shift functioning appropriately. And then it's also appropriate. So you're not, you know, you're using the right gear for the situation that you're in instead of reacting to, something else or trying to use a different gear that wouldn't be appropriate.
Right. But then when the situation is over, being regulated means you're able to bring yourself back to
Exactly.
rest or to whatever is then needed,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to having like a, I don't know, PTSD reaction that has to do with the past, where it's not appropriate to what's going on, and then you're just stuck there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can be in a
Or like in chronic fatigue when we get, yeah, where we just, whatever, we're in shutdown and we can't get ourselves moving.
well, as I mentioned before, there are more than two survival states. So we have the rest state, we have the sympathetic or activated state, and then we have the shutdown or collapse state. And there are also several blended states. So I just like to point that out, that you may be in a survival state that's not one of the ones that you would typically think of. And that can be harder to identify and a bit more subtle and often quite confusing for people. There's also safety states that are blended states that we can go into intentionally, that we can lean on and activate, so that that can help us maybe access a sense of safety in a different way than some of your more stereotypical, like restful tools. And again, I'm going to talk more about that in detail in this Beyond Regulation Nervous System Secrets training.
So, what are some other misconceptions that you wanted to talk about?
Well, the other big one that I think is important for people to understand, especially when they're working on CFS recovery or when they have chronic dysregulation of, you know, various kinds, can show up in the body in a lot of different ways.
Yeah,
Some
a lot of the children I work with are in that state, or even the moms without having full blown CFS.
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't have to manifest as a major illness, although it often eventually will if we don't address this earlier on. Um, so yeah, folks who are having maybe sleeping issues or digestive issues or low grade anxiety type issues would definitely want to pay attention to this. So people who start to do this work, who realize that, okay, I need to get my nervous system in a better shape, get out of this chronic dysregulation, will often think of those survival states as the enemy. And anytime they have any level of activation, they're immediately trying to get back into that parasympathetic state. But if we only focus on being in the rest state or getting into the rest state, which is generally where people put the emphasis and focus, then we're not ever creating the capacity and the ability to deal with things that are stressful or that are difficult and challenging. And difficult emotions is another example of this. So it's important to build our agility and build our capacity even as we're focused on building our ability to create safety. So we want to have a sense of safety and tools for safety that we can use even in difficult situations that might be appropriate to have a survival response to.
So, can you give an example on like both ends, both in being activated and being in shutdown?
So if you just suffered a shock, for example, like earlier this year, a friend of mine passed away. And when I learned this, I went into a shutdown response. And that was appropriate because that was a big emotional, intense experience that I needed time to turn inward and process and not immediately just be going about my day. So that was an appropriate survival response, but I had tools for that state so that I didn't get stuck there. So I wasn't in that catatonic kind of grief mode for weeks and months. Of course, I was experiencing grief, but I didn't have to stay in a freeze state. Or that's another misconception. It's actually not a freeze state. And I still am training myself out of using these words incorrectly. I didn't have to stay in that collapsed state for more than a few hours because I had the tools to create safety in that space and to slowly bring myself out of it. Um,
So that's similar to what happened to me a few weeks ago, where I thought I was like CFS was coming back or I was depressed. And then I realized, oh no, I just like felt so many emotions that I went into some kind of shutdown. And then I was like, okay, I know what to do. And then I just like, okay, I'm just going to start feeling all my emotions. And then I got myself right out of it.
right.
Right. So that was kind of an appropriate, it was like too many emotions got stirred up at once. And then I kind of went into shutdown because I couldn't cope with it all. And then I was able to gradually bring myself back out by processing them all one at a time.
Yeah, and people will often say like, "Oh, to heal, you need to dig up these repressed emotions or deal with your emotions." And I agree with that, but also a lot of times people can't do that in a way that
Yeah, you
is
need to.
safe
To
and
develop
safe.
capacity first, or have somebody hold the space
Yeah, you need to
so
create
that you don't just
safety.
re-stimulate yourself and create more trauma from it.
Right. You need to create enough safety and have enough tools for safety that you can actually hold space for those emotions without getting completely overwhelmed by them. So that's a really good example. Yeah. And then an example on the other side might be if, you know, someone is potentially going to attack you or is acting really aggressively towards you, then you might get activated into a fight or a flight state, and that would be completely appropriate for that situation. Maybe you would run away, and you would have all of the body systems helping you to do that because of the activation of your nervous system. And then once you are in a safe place, having the tools to create a sense of safety again and to slowly bring yourself out of that so you don't get stuck there, then that builds capacity to know that, okay, I can go into situations that may not be completely safe. I can expand my life in those ways, like maybe traveling in foreign countries where you don't know exactly what's going to happen. You can allow yourself to have these experiences and this larger span of life when you have the tools and you have the capacity to hold whatever might come up from that without it getting stuck in the body as trauma.
So would it be true to say, because like I'm thinking when I was just coming out of CFS and I was kind of re-engaging in life, even doing like the most banal thing would be activating some because it felt new in a way, but it didn't necessarily feel bad. So it kind of felt like it was appropriate to the situation that, yeah, my nervous system was like a little bit more activated of, oh, you're doing this, and oh, you're seeing all these people, and oh, you're with new people, which you haven't done in years. But then I was able to be like, okay, yeah, I'm feeling it. Okay, yeah, okay, it's okay. And then it would kind of like slowly calm down. So yeah, there wasn't a sign that anything was wrong. It was just like my body was adjusting to new circumstances. Is that kind of an example of it?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We've got to build capacity because if we just create safety and we just build an ability to be in a rest state and we're doing a lot of resting, that's great. That's a great place to start. But then you're just going to be stuck in your room forever
Right.
because you're not building the capacity to have some stress on the system because our nervous system has to have that resilience and the ability to experience difficult situations without getting stuck. So that's what we work on next is building capacity. Yeah, and I'm going to talk a lot more about that. And I have actually 4 steps or 4 components of building capacity, and that's something I'm going to go into in this Beyond Regulation training, which will be linked in the comments. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to hear it.
I'm excited to share more of these kind of lesser known nervous system tools and debunk some of the misconceptions or misunderstandings that a lot of people have about these different nervous system states.
Well, I'm excited too to have it as a resource because I know my people all love your videos and are always like, wow, this is so cool. Oh, I didn't understand that. That makes so much sense. So,
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to make it all make sense. All right, I'll see you there. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon.